Is your magic meter running low? Well, we've got a cure for you. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli.
And I'm Patrick Dougal.
And I'm Don Hahn.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Disney royalty in the house this morning.
And me too.
Yeah, Don Hahn is here. I will be bold enough to say future Disney legend Don Hahn.
No, really?
Yes.
That's very kind, thank you.
Are you kidding me? The
That's
amount
very
of...
nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, Beauty and the Beast.
Wow.
Lion King. Hunchback of Notre Dame. Waking Sleeping Beauty. We will get to all of this. This man is responsible for all of that.
That's crazy.
Patrick, how did we do this?
Magic. Disney magic.
Disney magic.
And there were firearms involved.
Well,
A ransom note.
Yeah, but that's all behind us now.
folks, we're going to get to all of that awesome stuff. But first, we want to start the way that we start. Actually, we'll get to our 5-question list in a second. But tomorrow night, or tonight, actually, if you're watching this or listening on the day it comes out, Monday, September 14th, 2015, tonight on PBS, American Experience is doing the first part of a 4-hour documentary about Walt Disney, which this man produced. So,
Well, I didn't produce it, but I'm in it, so that's...
you're in it.
I worked on it.
You worked a lot on it.
Close up. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a sec, but we have to start the way that we start every single interview with a guest, and that's with our 5 questions, just to kind of get an idea of what kind of Disney fan you are.
I thought you were going to say with a full body massage. That would be
that's
weird.
next.
That's just wrong.
So, Pat, go ahead and start.
So, of course, we have to start our first question with your favorite Disney animated movie.
101 Dalmatians.
Ooh.
Mid-century masterpiece. Actually, if you level out the box office for adjustment in currency, it's right up there with Snow White and Lion King and those films in terms of popularity.
Wow. That's awesome. Favorite Disney song? This can be anything from a movie, from a theme park, whatever you want.
This is a weird one. The second star on the right from Peter Pan. Why? I don't know. But it's just magical. It's like one of those things that's a prologue. It captures all the Disney magic. It's not overplayed, God knows. But it's kind of the When You Wish Upon a Star of that movie. I just love it. Don't know why.
Good answer.
The second star.
Oh, no, copyright.
Yeah, sorry. I think you can sing 3 notes.
I think 7 seconds or something.
Yeah. Oh, I'm relieved.
And then while visiting the parks, do you have a favorite ride?
Wow, what a tough question. My favorite vintage ride that's not there anymore is the Monsanto adventure into inner space, which I can quote much of the dialogue from. And there is the nucleus of the atom. Do we dare explore the vastness of its inner space? No, we dare not. But right now, I'm kind of a Haunted Mansion fan.
Yeah.
It still holds up as though it were made yesterday. It's when we made the movie Haunted Mansion, we got to turn the lights on and walk the ride track. And it was remarkably simple. It's stagecraft and it's all about lighting and magic and things. But when you turn the lights on, you go, oh, this is made out of plywood. But wow, what a great piece of theater. It's theater. It really is.
I remember I've walked through Alice in Wonderland that way just because it broke down.
Great. Yeah.
And it is very interesting when the lights come in. You're like, oh my God, there is a black felt cloth hanging, hiding this.
It's really surprising.
Yeah.
But those guys knew what they were doing and still do.
Yeah. What do you think of Hatbox Ghost in there?
Great. Great. It's weird. I know the mythology and I'm like into it and think it's cool. And it's great when stuff like that can return and come and go. The fandom, the Disney loyalists are so great these days and are really supportive, more so than ever. It's crazy. It's like D23 this year. It was a mob scene, and it was so great to see everybody there and have a sense of all this kind of support and fandom for, all things Disney.
We were there. We didn't sleep very much.
Did you wait in those lines?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I was there like 5:30 in the morning to get into the 10 a.m. live action panel.
Was it worth it?
Yes.
I think it was.
Actually, here's a quick story.
Yeah. I'm going to interview you now.
I almost skipped the live action panel because of the fact that I so badly wanted to get in the parks and resorts.
Yeah.
And I was just feared that since they were one right after the other, I would miss Parks and Resorts. And Patrick convinced me. He's like, Jeff, don't worry, you'll be fine. Just go to live action, then run to Parks and Resorts.
Yeah.
But I almost skipped it because of the fear. And if I had missed the announcement of Star Wars Land, I would have been kicking myself so badly.
Yeah, but you were in the room, and you'll never forget that.
I literally jumped out of my seat.
I was not there.
Oh, my goodness.
I was actually in the men's room. Yeah. But that's
You found out on Twitter. Like, actually,
did.
you probably knew already. So
It's okay.
let's see. Favorite Disney theme park?
Wow.
And which have you been to? Have you been to all?
I have been to all. Well, Disneyland, first and foremost. I grew up there. Tokyo Disneyland. I can't say, how can you say this? Tokyo Disneyland. Tokyo Disney Seas,
Yeah.
which many people have not been to, is a jewel.
That's what I hear.
And unexpected. You just go, this is like a parallel universe theme park that was designed by the guys that did Disneyland, which it was. And yet it's all like differently themed. So I don't know. Paris, oh my God, amazing. And Hong Kong is actually also this little kind of, little jewel case you open up, and it's an interesting setting because it's in a little valley, and the land was kind of reclaimed from the ocean, and so the setting of the castle with the mountain behind it. So, but Disneyland is really the answer.
Okay. Good enough.
Disneyland.
And finally, Patrick?
While visiting a park, do you have a frequent show or parade or any entertainment that you think is just the pinnacle?
When I can, and it's very seldom, I try to track down the Dapper Dans on Main Street because they're brilliant and underappreciated. So it's those little things like the Dapper Dans, the piano player at Go Corner or whatever it's called now, and those little single guys, the little ensemble in New Orleans Square or something, that are often like such great color and so important to the parks. Not more so maybe, but the parades are great, the fireworks are great, the big shows are great, and you go, oh my God, it takes your breath away. But just to be able to sit there and listen to somebody who's a virtuoso on the piano in a way that we usually don't hear, and music we usually don't hear, is a real treat. I was there the other night, and I sat and had my hot dog, which was fantastic, and just listened to the guy play piano, and you just go, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Honestly, that's the greatest thing, I think, being a local going to the parks. Let's face it, if you're a tourist and you're visiting that once-in-a-lifetime trip, you're not going to have the opportunity to sit in there and do that. And that's the amazing thing about being an annual pass holder or with the company or whatever, a frequent visitor of the park is.
Yeah, the passes are great because when you think about it, in the life of Disney, it's a fairly new program. But they're great people. I do a lot of talks for them. In fact, I showed clips from the PBS Walt Disney documentary just a couple weeks ago to about 1,000 people at the AMC at Downtown Disney.
I was there.
Yes, you were. And then you captured me and put me in your trunk for today.
True.
But aside from that, it was so exciting to meet those people because they have a great knowledge of Disney, so you can have an intelligent conversation with them like you guys. And they're just enthusiastic. And then, that was the day that afterwards I went and heard the piano player. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that was our 5 questions. You survived.
Wow, did I do okay?
You did great. I liked your answers quite a bit. Sometimes people give answers like, really? That's your favorite? Really? But,
yeah.
But no, yours were superb. So.
The Casey Jr. train, which is an awesome ride.
They're all awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the big reason you're here is tonight's big special, American Experience Walt Disney. This, guys, if you're watching or listening, you're clearly a Disney fan. This is going to be the ultimate documentary on Walt. It's 4 hours long. It
is. I mean, there's been a lot of work done on Walt Disney and some spectacular films and documentaries. I think what's interesting about this is enough time has passed. We're nearly 50 years past his life now. And the very first meeting that Sarah Colt, the director of this film, took was with Diane Disney Miller up at the Walt Disney Family Museum. So she had an appreciation. What's interesting, I think what's really good is she's a Disney fan in the way that the world is a Disney fan, but she's not a fan in the way that maybe the three of us are fans. So she has a clear-eyed kind of journalistic view of it, which I think is all the better. You want somebody on a story like this to go in and tell you the man's life and not slant it, not try to defend him or try to slam him or what else. It's just what are the facts? Let's present the facts. And the facts, after 50 years, have to come from a lot of places. So one of the things she did that I really love is she went to eyewitnesses. So anybody else might have gone to historians, of which there are brilliant ones. But she went to people like Marty Sklar and people like Alice Davis, people who worked with the man, and Ron Miller, former head of the Disney company and Walt's son-in-law, and they all cooperated. They all wanted to be part of it. She found people like Ruthie Thompson, who used to work in scene planning and is a friend, and Don Lund, who's 102 years old, I think. and talked to them and got the truth from their perspective. So in a funny way, in a very clever way, it's like 10 blind men describe an elephant, because you're seeing all these different sides, some very personal from someone like Ron Miller, and some very business-like from Marty Sklar, but still about the magic and about who this guy is.
And it's kind of the perfect time in the sense that, let's face it, time is passing and these people are not around as much. So it's like now or never kind of situation. It is.
Yeah. Sadly, enough time has passed where these folks are getting up in age, still incredibly articulate about it. But these are very fresh memories to them because this was their life. And can you imagine working with Walt Disney? You would have some memories.
Yeah.
You'd have some memories. I mean,
My goodness.
Yeah. So, and then she went to some really interesting people from culture, people who are experts in American studies or art in America. People like Ron Suskind, who just wrote a book about his autistic son and how his son responds to Disney and how it really opened up some windows for his son. And then biographers, Neil Gabler, Michael Barrier, whose terrific biography is in the film. So I really admire what she did because she took the top scholars and the top eyewitnesses and put them in the film.
So was it her idea? Was she the initial person to say, let's do this? Or
no, it actually came from American Experience, which is a show, a PBS show, long-running PBS show.
Great PBS show.
Really great.
Really great
multi-award-winning, Emmy-winning show. Based in Boston at WGBH, they went to Disney, to Bob Iger, who in many ways is responsible for allowing this film to be made, because 90% of the photographs and clips about Walt Disney are owned and controlled by the Walt Disney Company. So you can't make a movie without those. And the agreement was interesting because he said, listen, what we will do is make a film about Walt Disney and treat him as though we would treat an American president. They've done a lot of shows about people, but they've never given 4 hours to a non-president. But they were convinced, rightly so, that Walt Disney had such an effect on popular culture in the 20th century that he would merit 4 hours. And I've seen the show, and when you get done with it, I promise you, you'll want more. You'll go like, oh, well, they didn't mention yada yada, and you'll just want to have a little more. And I think that's probably for the best. It's a big story. So, WGBH and American Experience went to Bob and said, so here's the deal. We'll treat him like an American Experience, and we will treat him journalistically. And Disney said, well, and then you'll show us, scripts and cuts and things. And they said, no, we're a independent public broadcasting station, and we will make this as a piece of journalism as honest as we can. And you'll see it with the rest of us on Monday night. Yeah. So when you're watching TV, you're going to be seeing it along with all of us at the same time. There was no previous screenings. There were no notes from Disney. And I think that's a real testament not only to Bob Iger and the Disney company, but also to PBS, who is that trusted as a brand and as a bunch of people. And Sarah Colt, the producer-director, who is an amazing filmmaker. Sarah did a documentary on Henry Ford. She's done the documentary for American Experience on Robert Kennedy. So she's certainly at the top of her game, and I think this particular documentary will, increase her reputation, certainly.
I think that one of the things that is kind of so gutsy about this is, I'm sure there are many people out there who had that idea of, I want to make the ultimate documentary on Walt Disney.
Sure.
I will never get permission to do it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's do you know if there was any resistance initially of, from the company being like, not sure how I feel, because they put out a great documentary, Walt, the Man Behind the Myth.
Great one.
Which is a really good Walt documentary. I highly suggest it. But the company was involved with that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, was there any, questionable?
Well, I wasn't there for those meetings, but I think not. I think enough time's passed. I think the conversations were honest about what the expectations were, that this would be the full treatment that one might give to Truman or Roosevelt or Lincoln. Let's give that treatment to Walt. And so once that conversation happened, it's funny. The Walt Disney Company is kind of this vague thing behind walls. It's not. It's people like you and me, like Bob Iger, like Becky Klein, who runs the archives, who is very involved in this film, who think about it and protect the company and protect Walt Disney, but they also realize you can protect it too much and you can lose that story. And and you guys know, there's a lot of people that walk up to that statue in the hub at Disneyland and go, "Oh, who's the old guy?"
That's what I was just going to ask you. I was going to say,
Yeah.
how many people do you think don't know who Walt Disney is?
I think you'd be very surprised. A lot of people don't. I had a group of 5th graders with me. This has been about 6 months ago. So Walt Disney, what do you know about Walt Disney? He's the guy that's frozen, right? And so you get these weird, cultural myths. And that's why this movie is even more important to say, it's not true. Here's the truth. And the truth, very clear-eyed, it goes into all the corners of this man's life for 4 hours. And it's kind of riveting, I have to say. I just am so proud to be a small part of it. I'm again, I didn't produce it, but I was able to make some connections for PBS. I'm on the board of PBS SoCal. So right now I have a very big love of public television and what they do in terms of education and how lucky we are in America to have a public television entity. And I have this big Disney history. So I was able to at least help in some small way to connect those two. And that was a huge honor, actually.
I got to see some clips from it because I was at the event you were talking about.
Yeah, sure.
And there is stuff in this documentary nobody has seen before.
Correct.
Where is this stuff coming from?
Well, when you're a documentary filmmaker at the level of Sarah Colt and her team, you are a treasure hunter. And Sarah came across, Jake, who runs Art Babbitt's website, who's a brilliant historian and has all things Art Babbitt. Saw some clips on that Art Babbitt website and said, wow, these are unusual. So she calls up Art's widow, his 3rd wife, I believe, who's still alive in Southern California, and goes over to her house and looks at the memorabilia and his desk, and it's a really cool place. And she says, I have some film cans in the garage. I'm not sure what's in there, but, you can look at those. Sarah takes those with her permission and goes away and has them transferred, brings them back, and it's all of Art's home movies of the wrap party from Snow White, of drawing classes, walking around the hallways of Hyperion, not even the new studio. So it's a look from a very human perspective. And there's some wonderful shots, and you saw them, of Walt Disney just at a party, sitting at a table joking with people. And he looks like such a cool guy. And he's not putting on a character, because he knew, and he talks about there was a character he played on television, and there was the real Walt Disney. So having access to those things with many people's help makes this unique, because you're seeing a lot of stills and a lot of footage that hasn't been seen before. And Sarah was also nice enough to give that footage then once she copied it to the Motion Picture Academy. So there'll be a permanent record of that.
Did the studio archives get it as well?
I believe they will be, yes, because again, Becky Klein and her staff has been really instrumental in this, because they have the goods and they know where everything is, and if they don't, they'll find it for you. So Becky was a very, very big part of this film, and Disney really opened its doors. There was never a point, at least in my experience, where there was any hesitation or any off-limits topics or anything. And the same with the Walt Disney Family Museum, which is
it's incredible
place. If you haven't been to the Walt Disney Family Museum, go immediately to the airport, buy a ticket, and go there. I promise you, it's kind of life-changing. It's
incredible there, because you can spend a long time in there.
Yeah.
And by the last room is the newsreel of Walt's death, and after having gone through this hours-long experience,
it's emotional.
It gets real. I mean, it's clips that I've seen a bunch of times. But in that moment of just having gone through this man's life, it's really, and they did a spectacular job.
Yeah, in Walt's family and Diane and Ron, the only museum I've ever seen that comes even close to it is the Winston Churchill Museum in London. And, it comes close. But in terms of its production and how it was put together and the story it's telling, it is really accepted as one of the finest museums on the planet. Yeah,
and now you mentioned Diane Disney Miller, who sadly passed away. What was it, a year or so? A little over?
Over a year ago.
Was she able to be interviewed for the documentary?
No. I connected Sarah, the director, with Diane, and they got to talk. And then Sarah flew from Boston out to San Francisco, and Diane toured Sarah through the museum and told stories of her father, but wasn't interviewed at that time. And they made plans for Sarah to come back and interview her later. And then sadly, Diane passed away. so she wasn't able to get her on camera. Ron, after some time and just some space happened, became willing to be interviewed as well. And the second night, Ron starts to appear and talks about his interaction with Walt. And it's so great because here's a guy who was in the room, and not just in the room in a business sense, but in the room on their cruise to Alaska, which was like the last family trip they took. Ron talks about a screening they did at Walt's house when his reaction to it and what it was like, what kind of car he drove, and where he kind of personalizes the guy.
Yeah, he was at Thanksgiving dinner with the man. It's like, can you imagine marrying into that family? Talk about intimidating. That's
intimidating. But he's Ron's one of the most humble and self-effacing guys, but also one of the smartest and has the biggest sense of Disney history of anybody I know.
It's fantastic.
Well, I can speak on Jeff in my behalf. It's just like, as a Walt Disney fan, you think you know so much about him.
Yeah.
And while doing this process, did you even learn things that you...
Oh, yeah.
Anything like specific that really like... No idea this.
Wow. I mean, there's so many chapters of this guy's life and so many corners to sweep in. We all know the broad strokes of it because there's been so many great movies, even like Walt and El Grupo, Ted Thomas's movie, that tells all these different chapters. The stuff that I didn't know that I found most interesting did come from people who worked closely with him, like Ron Miller, like Marty Sklar, like Bob Gurr, saying, I went down there to Anaheim and it was just like this dusty field and it's supposed to open up in 6 months.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's like not a chance. And there's these helicopter shots of Disneyland as a construction site, and it looks like a construction site. They could be building Disneyland or they could be building Walmart. Who knows? And Bob Gurr is just going, this is never going to happen. And 6 months later, they opened.
That's incredible.
So it's that kind of stuff that's like you just have never heard before.
Now 6 months is a parking lot. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, but the guy that you walk away from this documentary with respect not only for the man, but the obstacles he had to overcome. Mm-hmm. He was a guy who put his pants on one leg at a time. Very Midwestern, went to school through the 8th grade, but tenacious, full of audacity in the way of somebody who can say, yeah, I'm going to make a feature-length animated film. Yeah, I'm going to make a theme park, but you don't know what a theme park is until I've made it. That's audacity. And then persistence to say, you're either with me or against me. So I'm doing this. Are you coming along?
Yeah.
And if you're not, God bless you, just stand aside and I'm going to get this done. And when his eyes were focused on something, he was unstoppable. And that's what's so impressive.
Yeah. And he really, he walked the walk. He took the biggest risks so many times in his life. He went practically bankrupt to do Snow White and then create Disneyland and convince people of a theme park that who knows what that is. Like it's really mind-boggling the amount of, and I think one of the things that people say a lot is, most people become a master at one thing. And when you think of Walt Disney, it's like, nope, animation filmmaker, live action filmmaker, theme park, television, mastered it all. Yeah,
you could say one of his flaws was his biggest strength, which was he would get disinterested in things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he would never sit on his laurels and go, well, let's get some trophies and, sit down and talk in front of a camera like this. He would never do that. He would always say, no, what's next? What's next? What's next? And he also was incredibly prepared. They didn't pick Anaheim just because it was cheap land. They picked it because they got, Stanford to do research and find out where the population was going to grow. And then they studied things like Tivoli, the wonderful Danish theme park that's been there for 100 years, or Henry Ford's, or Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, which was restored by the Rockefellers. So there were theme parks around. They just weren't called that, but they were kind of recreations. So he studied and sent his guys there and did drawings and research. He wasn't just a roll the dice guy. He was a very calculated, smart, do your homework kind of guy.
Yeah.
And then he could pull all that together and make that into Disneyland.
So this is a really tough question, but do you have a favorite part of the documentary? Tune into both nights, but he's not going to tell you which night it's in. But
well, I'll tell you what. There's two places in Walt's life that I think are extraordinary, both equally so. One is where he's focused on making Snow White. So here's a guy that in 10 years goes from drawing stick figures like Steamboat Willie, silent movies, 10 10 years later, they're doing Snow White and Fantasia and Bambi. Unbelievable. So that period of buildup where he brings in teachers like Don Graham, and he brings in people to lecture. He brings in people like George Balanchine, the ballet choreographer, to choreograph dances for Fantasia. He's bringing in the best on the planet. He's not bringing like Steve down the street, whose grandmother used to dance. He's bringing in George Balanchine. He's bringing in Igor Stravinsky, who lives in Hollywood, who just composed Rite of Spring, a couple decades earlier. He's bringing in Frank Lloyd Wright, who comes by the studio and sees Sorcerer's Apprentice and hates it, and lectures about it, how he hates it and why he hates it. So he's open to all these different points of view. Walt was a folk hero in Europe, even in 1935 when he toured through Europe. He was like royalty. He went everywhere and was shown the finest, restaurants and cinemas and things. And he brought that back 2 years before Snow White and just pushed even harder to get the quality of that film up. So he realized if he was going to make Snow White, the level of his artistry had to go up. And so he ran a school. So he's not just making movies. He invented consumer products, modern consumer products licensing. Kay Kamen and the Walt Disney Company. That's a whole other story. Modern animated features. The event premiere, when you went to Snow White's premiere, there was a 50-piece orchestra on the street out in front of the Carthay Circle Theater. There were grandstands with people standing there. There was an entire Snow White village with the Seven Dwarfs and costume in the middle of the street. There was an exhibit in the art of animation there for Snow White. So everything we think of now, we go, oh yeah, as the next Disney movie came out, that was all invented. It was never done back then, and Walt and RKO Pictures, which was the distribution company, invented all that. So an amazing time. The second time was the same thing happened at Disneyland. Walt was laser focused on it in the same way he was on Snow White, and everything from the selection of the land to the rides to what he was going to do to the corporate sponsors, how clever he and Roy were to say, we can't afford this. We're going to get ABC to fund it. Yeah. We're going to get Western Publishing to fund it in their golden books. And then we're going to get Carnation, and we're going to get Monsanto, and we're going to get all these companies to pay for all these exhibits in kind of a World's Fair style. So there's as much genius going on off the screen in a business area as there was on the screen, and Walt was very much a part of that.
And even with Disneyland, opening day, doing it live on television.
Crazy.
I don't know if it was the first necessarily, but talk about, opening your theme park alone is stressful enough. Let's put it on live television.
Yeah, and you guys have all heard the stories, and your listeners have too. It was
seen the videos.
A bazillion degrees, and that's in the documentary. You see poor Art Linkletter running around trying to, there was no Wi-Fi. They didn't have handheld mics. They were like pulling cords. Amazing feat of television, much less building this place.
I think my favorite is they're opening the Tomorrowland one. He's like reading it, and someone's like talking to him. He's like, "What? Okay." And he goes back.
I thought we started.
You're on, yeah. No, it's fun. It's very fun. It's fun to look back at that too and realize we have so much. We live in an era of modern miracles, and to look back and say those guys did incredible things without iPhones, and it's amazing.
It's amazing. I've got one final question about the documentary before I do. You got any that?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So as we've mentioned, there's been tons of books written about Walt. There've been other documentaries. What specifically about this one? What questions does this one answer that the others don't?
I think the perspective is important on this one, meaning it's a outside perspective. It's a perspective from people who are worked with Walt Disney, but also from people who are in education and people who observe society and culture. And getting both of those points of view in one film is really unique. There's been great films done on Walt Disney that maybe were very much about the people that worked with him. Here's Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. Here's people that were very close to him. That's very valid and very much a part of this movie. But also to have people that aren't sure about Walt Disney. And you have to, we're all fans. You're watching this because you're a fan. But there's a part of culture that either doesn't get it or doesn't care or downright hates it, and just says, oh, this is just plastic and rubber and wood and not the real world. If you want a castle, go to Europe. Well, yeah, we know that. It's like,
go to Disneyland Paris. Hello.
Yeah. Let people say that. And it's like, oh, I never thought of that. Yes. Come on. Yeah, I know. And so give me a break. But so I think that's what's interesting because you want to hear that. And I've had people say, oh, is there anything negative in the film? Actually, I don't think there's anything negative. There's things that are very truthful, and there's other points of view expressed. And I think that's important. You can't take a public figure like Walt Disney and not examine him journalistically without going to that spectrum of opinions. Mm-hmm. It would be wrong to do so. Otherwise, it's a puff piece. It's a piece of hagiography that you're putting up there, and you just go, gee, wasn't Walt Disney great? Well, yeah, he was great. But you know what made him great? Is he suffered. He suffered through no money. He suffered through, he had a tough dad. I mean, which everybody did back then. And he had no money, and he had to deliver papers in the snow. But he also built Disneyland, and he also made the first sound cartoon. And so you have to, if you look at that balance, it's even more incredible. It wasn't like a guy with $1 bazillion that came out and built Disneyland. He was a guy whose wife always said, "Why can't we have money like everybody, like all your other producers?" He wasn't part of Hollywood. He wasn't part of the old boys club in Hollywood at all. He was over the hill in Burbank, and I think wanted to be acknowledged by his peers, but a lot of times he was considered the cartoon boy, out in the suburbs. So interesting story, and you want all those points of view to understand him.
Pat, has he convinced you to watch the documentary? You're convinced at this point? Before.
You don't have to watch. I think.
Are you kidding me?
The finals of Bachelor in Paradise actually are on at the same time, so you may want to. No. It's a tough choice.
So just the thing I'm most excited about is, like you were saying, this unbiased opinion and of this man.
It's the truth. It's just like he was a guy, and we all, as a human, there are positive and not so positive things, and this is just the most unbiased perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's very hard to know Walt Disney. Maybe his closest family members knew him. His grandchildren certainly knew him. But for us as outsiders, it's hard to know this guy. People who worked with him, I was very good friends with people like Joe Grant and Frank Thomas and Ollie and Eric Larson. They worked with him day in and day out. In many ways, they didn't know him.
Yeah.
Hard to get close to. The guy was so busy anyway, and so this is a chance to try to get close to him. And are you going to disagree with some things that were said? Yeah, I hope so. Like if I did 4 hours on you, would there be things you disagree with? Yeah,
I guarantee.
Yeah,
yes.
If you did 4 hours on me, it'd be like the whole 4 hours you disagree with. So you expect that, and you want that. You want to be challenged as a viewer. You want to be challenged. And that's what PBS does so well. It's challenging. You want to be challenged and say, "Oh, is that true?" Or, "Oh, man, I don't agree with that at all. That's a perspective from a sociologist or an art historian." And no, she's full of it. So you're able to look at this and make your own judgments and compare and contrast people's opinions, because none of us really knew him. Yeah. And this is a great way to examine a character in the way that we might examine a president of the United States, with the same kind of honor and depth that you might approach a president. But now it's this cultural icon of the 20th century, which he was.
Nice. So just a reminder, if you're listening or watching this on the day it comes out, it's Monday, September 14th, 2015. Part 1 is on PBS tonight. Part 2 is on PBS tomorrow night. Catch it live. Set your DVR. If you can't do either, if you're listening to this in the future, first of all, hello, future. But secondly, get the DVD because it's coming out on DVD.
Yeah, you can order the DVD today on Amazon, and you can also watch it. This show will be replayed like most PBS shows, probably 4 times before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So watch it when it's replayed. Get the DVD. Give it as a Christmas present. Have a viewing party. It'll be fun.
Cool. So, folks, we spent a long time speaking with Don.
Yes.
He was quite generous with his time. And let me tell you, the best is yet to come.
Mm-hmm. You learned all about the documentary that is premiering tonight and tomorrow, but we still have to talk about everything else he's done. So make sure to come back next week as we talk even more about Don Hahn and his career. And plus, there's a little special bonus.
Yes, we got some prizes. He signed some prints from Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and the Walt documentary. So if you want to win these, go to DisneyCoastToCoast.com, click on the contest page, and you'll see how to enter there. And I promise you, come back next week for more with Don Hahn. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Twist on it. I'm laughing because everybody's buying these. Guys, we have no idea what this character is. He could be the next Jar Jar Binks.
No.
He could be.
No.
What if he is?
Look at him.
I don't care.
He's adorable.
He is adorable, but everybody loved Jar Jar Binks until they saw the movie.